DBSCG things.
What's up, Yuhp gang? It's your boy Taxon, and welcome back to Yuhp DBSCG Things, and today we're going over another very exciting deck profile, guys. This is going to be the deck that I took to my last local because I got some recent support through the dash packs. This is Trunks Geta. But before we get into it, guys, I do want to say if you guys want any custom mats and or sleeves, absolutely check out Promats, guys. This is the best place to go get your custom card needs, and if you guys do decide to get a mat from them, then make sure you guys use the promo code Yuhp to save on your entire order. With that being said, guys, if you guys enjoyed this list or my content in general, remember to hit all those buttons for me. Like, comment, subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. And with that being said, let's turn it around and dive in. Alrighty, you guys, here is the deck. Now let's go ahead and go over it. First things first, we'll talk about the leader. Auto on the front side, when you attack, you'll draw one. That only goes off if you go second in your matchup. Activate main. If you have 2 or more energy, you can choose a yellow Vegeta from your battle area, place it underneath him. If you do so, you can draw a card, rip yourself down to 6, and flip him over. Your normal awaken is at 4 or less, draw 2, go to the back side. Auto when you attack. Most people should know this, but I'm going to read it anyways for any of the newer players. When you attack, you may draw a card. If you choose not to draw a card, you can play a yellow 1-drop Vegeta, Bulma, or Trunks Future from your drop area or hand in rest mode, which will proc the autos on those cards to play as well. Auto once per turn. When you activate the EX Evolve skill of one of your yellow battle cards, you draw a card. And then activate battle once per turn, which is essentially a once per game because you can only put one Vegeta underneath them. You can pop one card from underneath this card and place it in the drop area. The card gets 10,000 power and double strike for the battle. So it's basically chop a double strike on your leader, making you a 25k double strike. Next up, starting to dive into the list, we're going to start off with generic yellow stuff. 3 Frieza's Army Reinforcements. This is a very staple card for most colors right now. Counter the attack, play a blocker token. You can activate it for free if you're at 5 or less by taking a life. Next up, we have 3 Realm of the Gods Black Kamehameha. This is essentially just a plus 10k draw card. It's essentially you're just going to use this as combo power. If it rests something, good for you. If not, you just survive an attack. Tyrannical Blow. This card has been coming up a lot for me recently, especially considering one of my playtest partners plays Supreme Kai. This card is works very, very well against anything that has a unison. So as long as your opponent's playing anything, this card doesn't even have to affect the 3-cost card. As long as they're playing a card and you can activate this on the counterplay timing, you would play this and just skill negate the unison for the turn. So if they haven't plussed or used any of the effects on their unison yet, this card is basically going to shut off their unison for the turn. It's also something to utilize on your turn if your opponent uses a floodgate or something, like going against blue or something. If you are going in for game or something, you swing, your opponent uses the new Android 17 floodgate, you would go ahead and hit them with the T blow. The card comes in, skill negate it so you don't get the flood negate effect. And then also you're going to tag their boo and make it so they can't use the blocker skill on their boo or the -1. Next up, we have a few one-of extra cards. 1 Vegeta Final Flash. This is a card I've been considering cutting. I feel like just because the color yellow has this card in its arsenal, people respect it in general. So you may not even need it in your main board for people to be scared of it. But it's as a one-of, it's one of those cards that if I have it and I need it, I have it, and if I have it and I don't need it, I charge it and then make my opponent scared of it. So that's the thing. Next up, we have Release from Evil. This is essentially Vegeta's Final Flash, but done on counterattack timing, ignoring barrier. Very good. It also stops dual attacks, and if you use it properly on your opponent's front side of their leader, like if they're playing a leader that draws on attack, awaken, draw 1 and tap 1, and then you have an activate main that draws 1. If they're doing something like that, trying to utilize both skills on their leader, if they swing with the unawoken leader first, you can use this and negate their awaken skill for the turn. So that's pretty good. Next, we have our mandatory one-of Power of the Super Saiyan. This card barely rests anything anymore. Most of the time when I'm using this, I'm just discarding it to draw a card and get a free cycle. Diving into the reason we are playing so many extra cards. Mecha Frieza Robotic Riposte. If you play yellow, you kind of realize by now that you kind of just have to main 4 of these. If you're not maining 4 of these, you're probably going to lose. You definitely need to see this card as often as possible in just about every single matchup, just to slow your opponent down to help you get into the winning position. Next up, we have 2 Son Goku Steadfast Assistance. With how much deflect there is nowadays, this card feels more and more useless. But being a card that I can use 1 energy on my opponent's turn, draw a card, and play a blocker, whether or not it affects the card being played, is very powerful in my opinion. This is one of those cards that I like to use if I have 2 energy up to stop Broly Crown from getting the skill. Like if I have 2 energy up and they want to start their turn by Broly Crowning, I'll respond to the Broly Crown, play a blocker, draw a card, and then they won't be able to see my hand because I only have 1 energy up. It's one of those cards that I've considered cutting a lot, but as of right now, I just keep it in here because it is a blocker. It does draw me a card, and like I said, that instance against Broly Crown is very, very nice. Next up, super combos. We have Krillin, Moments Before Comeback. This guy is generic. He's been known for quite some time now. You essentially combo with him when he enters your combo area. You get to choose 1 card in your hand, bottom deck, and draw 2 if you're at 4 or less, and then the card gains 10,000 power. 10,000 combo power. Next up, because we're running only 3 Krillins, we run the 1 Piccolo Gohan. This is essentially a free 30k if your opponent has 5 or more things in rest mode. After you combo for that free 30k combo, the card would play, it draws a card and then switches something to rest mode on play, and then when you attack with it, it does the same thing. So if you do this on your turn, you get 2 draws off that card and 2 instances of resting. Next up, a couple of Unisons that I decided to keep in my main board. Vegeta Unison of Fury. This is one of those cards that I just don't want to get caught without in my main because there's so many cards right now that are just big bosses that are bigger than energy costs and just decide, I'm going to beat you up. And this card, if played correctly, can get around those cards. So, it's not one of those cards that you just stick turn 2 and hope to God it sits there all game. It's not. The way I use this card is like, depending on my matchup, if I know when they're going to be playing their boss monster or when they think it's safe for their boss monster, going into that turn, I would play this the turn before, use the minus, and hopefully that's enough to save me from some of them bigger attacks. Another thing to note is that this card is also a beater as well. So if you played him for 3 energy, use his activate main to rest one of your cards, give him marker, you can minus 3 off him, leave him at 1 marker, rest one of your opponent's energy, gain dual attack and double strike in 5k for the turn. So he'd be a 20k double strike dual attack, rest your opponent's last energy most likely. Next up, we run the 2 copies of Son Gohan Z Fighter. This card was stable for yellow a while ago. I've been considering cutting it, but I haven't yet. It almost never comes up, but when it does, it's like extremely powerful because like in the matches that your opponent can't mess with your Unison, this card is just super, super powerful. So like this 3-cost Unison against blue is very nice because blue's best way to deal with Unisons right now are Smoke Dragon. Unfortunately, against green is not really the greatest because this card's minus effect gives him triple attack. You can basically go, yeah, give him triple attack, I'll swing with him. Your green opponent will go, yeah, I'll combo this 1 card, still take the damage, I'll Z-charge that, and then knock the last of your markers off with this Gohan rare. So, unfortunately, in some matchups, the card is a little dead, so more than likely just charge fodder, but in the matchups that it's good, it's really good. So, we have been leaving it for now. Considering taking it, though, but we'll see. Next up, we're going to dive into the actual archetype of the deck, which means that eventually here we'll be getting to some of the new dash pack support. We have 2 copies of Bulma Future on the line. This is essentially a consistency piece to help us find our 1-drops and or 3-drop evolves when we need to. This card says, auto when it's played, you can draw a card, so it works very well off the backside of your leader because your leader can play a Bulma from the drop area, so if you just want to play a body in rest mode to draw a card, you can do so. Easy way to get her to the drop area is with her activate main. You can pitch her from your hand. If your leader is this leader, you can top 7 search for 1 3-cost or less a Vegeta or Trunks Future card, and then add it to your hand and shuffle your deck. Very, very, very strong card in my opinion. Helps a lot with the consistency, especially if you open this and you don't open one of your 1-drops. It's very nice to go top 7 search for one of those 1-drops to make sure that you get that awakening going off. Next up, we have the more important 1-drops and also the cards I was just talking about you more than likely are going to want to search out with Bulma on your turn 1. You have Trunks Father-Son Teamwork and Vegeta Father-Son Teamwork. These cards are essentially the same thing with different names and then different names in their autos. So essentially they're both 1-drop barrier 4Ks. They both have the auto to, if your leader is a yellow Trunks Future card, you may choose one. When this card is played, you can either draw a card or play the opposing card from your deck or drop area. So if you play Vegeta, he's going to go through your deck or drop and play this. If you play Trunks, he's going to go through your deck or drop and play that. Next thing to note is one of the new dash pack cards. We have 2 copies of the new Goku and Vegeta Alliance of Rivals. This guy is essentially the same thing. When you play him, if your leader is this leader, you'll draw a card. And then you have an activate main, which is pretty nifty. Pretty easy way to get him into the drop area so you can utilize the free play off your leader. He is a 1-drop barrier as well. 4K matches very well with the 1-drop theme of this deck. Activate main, limit 1 of your leader is both yellow and a Vegeta and Trunks leader, so you can basically only use the activate main part of the skill if you're on the backside of your leader and not Z awakened, because if you Z awaken, your leader does go directly only to a Trunks Future. So yeah, if your leader's both a Vegeta and Trunks Future, yellow, you can discard this card from your hand and then choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards or unisons with an energy cost of 2 or less and switch it to rest mode. This card would have been really good if it didn't have a cost restriction. Like, this card would have been great in this deck for that resting skill. Like, if it would have been able to hit the blocker tokens that get played off of like Freeze Army, that would have been amazing. But unfortunately, only being able to hit actually, I don't know. Leave it in the comments below, guys, because I'm rereading this now. It says choose up to one of your battle cards or unisons with an energy cost of 2 or less. So maybe there's no cost restriction on the battle card part of that, but there's a cost restriction on the unison part of that. So I don't know. Leave it in the comments below what you guys think about that. Anyways, the only reason he's really in here is to add an extra 1-drop to the deck. You can also awaken with this if that's the only 1-drop that you've found so far. And also, he's the EX Evolve target for one of the newer dashback cards in the deck. Next up, we have 4 copies of SS2 Trunks Future on the line. Everybody knows what this deck, what this card does. This card is essentially the backbone to this deck. Essentially, you play this guy out on turn 2. You will draw 2 cards. He's a 19k barrier blocker. He switches to active mode when you play him with EX Evolve on top of one of these guys. The reason that's important is because when you attack with your leader and free play one of these 1-drops, they play in rest mode, so that you can still EX Evolve onto them, and then they switch to active mode, so you don't have to worry about things like that. Another important thing to note is that because these cards don't have deflect in your yellow mirror matchup, if they decide to play something like Son Goku Steadfast Assistance, or if you're in your mirror matchup and his the autos like an auto would go off to make it go in rest mode, your auto would just untap it. As long as it's like the skill that happened on play. And then, yep, that's about it. And this hits the very first battle card or unison played, and it switches it to rest mode, so that's a very strong skill. Next up, we have the Vegeta counterpart. He evolves for 1, draw 2, including the skill with your leader. He switches to active mode just like the Trunks, and then when he attacks, you get to choose one of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode, ignoring barrier and KO it. Card pairs very, very well with Trunks. It helps you keep that board very clear. Next up, the new Dash Pack Vegeta Fight for the Future. This guy is a double strike EX Evolve limit 1. If I have 3 or more if I have 3 or more energy, pay 1 yellow, draw a card, and then place him over top of a Goku and Vegeta with an energy cost of 1. So specifically only over that card. He does draw 2 if he's your first EX Evolve, because he draws here, and then he'll proc on this as well. So you get to draw 2 just like on any of the other EX Evolve targets. Next up, you have auto. When this card attacks, you get to choose one of your opponent's battle cards or unisons, and it cannot be switched to active mode until the end of your opponent's next turn. So if your opponent plays something, it gets switched to rest by this. You can play this on your next turn, choose it, lock it in rest mode, and then essentially every single time this card attacks, you can keep choosing the same card or just another new threat and lock it. So if you just want to keep one card locked in rest mode all game, as long as this card doesn't get removed, you can just keep attacking and then choosing the same card and keeping it in rest mode for the duration of until your opponent's next charge phase, which is very, very strong. Yeah, and it says at the end of their charge phase, so it's like not at the end of turn or anything. So at the charge phase, everything would stand, and then at the end of that, he would still not be able to. So that's when he'd be able to. So unless you have a skill that would untap something off that because of that skill, that's something that's kind of annoying. Next up, we have the SSV Vegeta SS Trunks Father Son Bonds. Critical 35k, play him for 2 energy over top of a Trunks and Vegeta Future in your battle area. It's almost like a Union Potara, but not quite Union Potara. You have an activate battle. You can place 2 cards from underneath this card, draw into the drop area, draw 1 card, and then choose 2 of your opponent's battle cards in rest mode, KO them, and then this card will gain triple strike. Very, very good card. Not fantastic, but it's one of those cards that if it happens and your opponent doesn't have an out to it, it's definitely going to do a lot of damage. And one of the cards that are going to help us get damage through, Swift Retaliation Cooler. This guy has 3 energy, counter, draw a card, and if you have 6 or more cards in rest mode, you draw yet another card, so he can be draw 2, stop the counter, so your attack can go through. We have our one-ofs. We have 1 Poutine. Another card that could be cut, but I like this card because in situations where I know my opponent's going to be going in like crazy and playing many cards off skills, I like to let my opponent think that this is going to be their only thing. Let them play into this, get their rest off that, and then once they get their rest off this, I'll play this out, and now they have another instance of this card essentially that they have to play around. And if this card sticks, there's also a card in the Z deck that will give us situation to use a skill like that as well. And then next up for our 1-ofs, we have, I'll move them over here. 1 Bergamo Ferocious Roar. I almost never use this card no more. I might as well just take it out, put it into the side or something, I don't know. It can be efficient. It basically just stops a turn, taps your opponents out, and plays a 20k. So essentially, for 2 energy, if one of your opponent's cards gets switched to rest mode, you can play this card from your hand. And then auto on that card, if your leader's yellow or U9, you can choose 2 of your opponent's cards, ignoring barrier, and switch them to rest mode. So a lot of the time, you're just tapping 2 of your opponent's energy. Next up, we have our Furthering Destruction Champa. I would be playing Kai if Kai had a cooler art. Unfortunately, Kai only has like reverse foils, and this has judge stamps. So unfortunately, I decided Champa for my pretty yellow deck. And then my next up, we have Mira Creator Absorbed. Essentially, one of the better overwhelms right now for yellow because it does get such a big battle power that you can utilize one of the Z cards to make it so that you get essentially 2 instances of Mira for 2 energy, which is very, very strong. Next up, we'll move these back over here. Next up, we'll move into the Z deck. Very, very new support for the Z deck. We have this new Z leader. SS2 Trunks Strike to change the future. Keep in mind he is only Trunks, so once you hit this guy, you can no longer do this guy. So with his effect at least. You do Z Awaken when you're at 4 or less life, and then you just go over top of your Trunks Vegeta leader. Auto when you attack, you have to choose one. So this skill makes it so that your opponent has an easier time responding to the auto, because on this side of the leader, it says that you may draw, and then if you choose not to draw, you can play a 1-drop. So essentially, your opponent has to activate their counterplay to your draw, and then if they counter, you just draw a card. But if they don't, you just play the 1-drops. But now it's telling you that you get 5k, and then you get the option between the 2. So essentially, if you say I'm going to gain 5k and then choose the option to play a 1-drop, that opens up the counter window 1 for your opponent to go ahead and essentially say no to your 1-drops. So once you hit the Z leader, it is a little bit harder to utilize your 1-drops from the drop area, being that your opponent can respond to them. But still good all nonetheless. Next up, one of the cooler parts about it, activate main once per turn for 1 yellow energy. You can choose 1 SSB Vegeta and SS2 Trunks Father-Son bonds in your battle area. Switch or draw 1 card and then switch it and the chosen card to active mode, or this and the chosen card to active mode. So essentially, with this guy, you play him out for 2. Let's theoretically, we're already at the Z leader. You play him out for 2. You get your swing in, whether they negate or not. That's cool. You can go ahead and activate for 1. You draw 1 card. You would untap him and him, and then get these attacks all over again. And keep in mind that the activate battle on him, it is limit 1, but you can do it more than once. So if you do go over 2 fully evolved 3-drops, you'll have 4 cards underneath them. So you do have 2 instances and 2 chances to do that. So you can do it once on your turn, once on your opponent's turn, or once on your turn, let your opponent's turn go, and then once on your turn again. So essentially, it'll make this card and your big 8-drop a dual attack. So you'll for 3 energy, essentially, you get to swing 2 times for critical, draw a card, and the auto on him is once per turn, luckily, because that would have been really, really strong if we could have drawn 2 out of that. So yeah, you get to swing twice for 20 crit, and then 2 times for a chance, or 2 times for 35 crit with a chance of going triple strike crit on one of those attacks. So very, very powerful line of play there. Not too shabby Z leader. It's okay. It's not something I do like a lot, but it's definitely an option. Next up, we'll go into our other 2 1-ofs in the Z deck. We have 1 copy of SSB Surmounting the Impossible. When we awaken, we do go down to 6. So putting ourselves with this card from 6 to 5 so that we can turn on this and then all in all turn on our super combos. Very, very good card in the Z deck, especially being able to utilize ourselves from 5 to 4 at any point of the game so that we can go to our Z leader is very, very good. Next up, Son Gohan facing new foes. This guy, essentially for 1 Z energy and 2 energy, you get no autos, no permanents, no nothing. I have nothing else in the deck that utilizes with this card besides the fact it's 2 energy, 1 Z energy, 15k dual attack. I did utilize this in my match against Gotenks to beat up his unison and make sure that I didn't have to deal with it going into his next turn. It does have deflect, so you can use him a little bit more willy-nilly from the Z deck without having to worry about your opponent doing something crazy and stopping it. Next up, we have 2 SSB Son Goku Evolved Defender. This guy is crazy because he's a 3 energy version that locks something from attack. Let me read him real quick. I'll just read him. Deflect Barrier. When this card is played, you get to choose one of your opponent's leaders, unisons, or battle cards in rest mode, and it cannot attack until the end of your opponent's next turn. So, that auto kind of works like this Vegeta, except for this Vegeta says that it can't be switched to active mode, and this says it can't attack. So, if you go 3 energy for him one turn, and then you have him on field, you can swing, lock something in rest mode, play him, and then something gets locked from attacking. So that's already saving you 2 attacks. And then if you have your Trunks on the field, he's going to rest something, stopping another attack. If you have him on field, you can pop a Z energy to rest something when they play it. That stops another attack. And then when you do one of those rests, you can play Poutine, which will essentially stop another attack if they play something off of a skill. So that is definitely the combo there. A lot of resting situations here. And he's a 25k beater too, and the skill only goes off if he's in rest mode. So you do want to make sure you get your attack off with him. Don't play into this card if you're floodgated and you can't attack with him. Next up, our last 2 cards for the Z deck is Oolong. Greed is good. I feel like this card is just kind of stable for yellow right now, or anything that has a yellow energy at that point. Essentially, for 1 energy and 2 Z energy, you can copy any one of your boss monsters' battle power and then swing with it again. So one of the ways I like to utilize this card is with the Secret Rare, because the Secret Rare is 40 and he's free to play. So a lot of the times I'll swing with my leader. I'll dump my Vegeta out from underneath him, make him a 25k double strike, and then I'll drop him on it, make him a 55k double strike, and then I'll play him, rest something, draw a card, swing with him, rest something, draw a card, and then I'll pay 1 and 2 Z to play him, activate his skill to copy his power, swing with him, and then I got 2 40ks, a 55 double strike. There's a lot of pressure there. And then another really, really good reason to utilize him, and probably the only reason we play Mirror Critter Absorbed in yellow right now, is because this combo. So essentially for 2 energy, or maybe 3 if you have your Champa, you get 2 instances of Mira with the Champa. So if you have 3 energy up, or you just have Mira and your counter ready, you just go Mira, absorb all the power from your Warp, which most of the time is going to be super, super late game. Like turn 5, turn 6, you're going to absorb like 50 to 60,000 power off that, making your leader like 100,000, or making him like 100,000 attacker. And then on top of that with the double strike. And if that attack doesn't go through, then that's when you go ahead and do the Oolong. And if the Oolong gets messed with, you counter or something crazy like that. But anyways, guys, that is my new Dash Pack Support Trunks Geta list. I did take this to my last locals. We had a small locals, so I don't feel like it's anything much to talk about. But with that being said, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this list. If you guys did, remember to hit all those buttons for me, like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you guys next time.